I had many falls and bruises. I was wet through from falling into the water, of which there was no great volume, but it had such a force that I could do nothing against it. Once I had to leap down a not inconsiderable waterfall into a deep pool below, and my swag was so heavy that I very nearly drowned. I had indeed a hair's breadth escape, but, as luck would have it, Providence was on my side. Shortly afterwards I began to fancy that the rift was getting wider, and that there was more brushwood. Presently I found myself on an open grassy slope, and feeling my way a little further along the stream, I came upon a flat place with wood where I could camp comfortably, which was well, for it was now quite dark. My first care was for my matches. Were they dry? The outside of my swag had got completely wet, but on undoing the blankets I found things warm and dry within. How thankful I was! I lit a fire, and was grateful for its warmth and company. I made myself some tea and ate 2 of my biscuits. My brandy I did not touch, for I had little left and might want it when my courage failed me. All that I did almost mechanically, for I could not realize my situation to myself, beyond knowing that I was alone, and that return through the chasm which I had just descended would be impossible. It is a dreadful feeling that of being cut off from all one's kind. I was still full of hope, and built golden castles for myself as soon as I was warmed with food and fire. But I do not believe that any man could long retain his reason in such solitude, unless he had the companionship of animals. One begins doubting one's own identity. I remember deriving comfort even from the sight of my blankets and the sound of my watch ticking, things which seemed to link me to other people, but the screaming of the wood hens frightened me, as also a chattering bird which I had never heard before, and which seemed to laugh at me, though I soon got used to it, and before long could fancy that it was many years since I had first heard it. I took off my clothes and wrapped my inside blanket about me, till my things were dry. The night was very still, and I made a roaring fire, so I soon got warm, and at last I could put my clothes on again. Then I strapped my blanket round me and went to sleep as near the fire as I could. I dreamed that there was an organ placed in my master's woolshed. The woolshed faded away, and the organ seemed to grow and grow amid a blaze of brilliant light, till it became like a golden city upon the side of a mountain, with rows upon rows of pipes set in cliffs and precipices, one above the other, and in mysterious caverns like that of Fingal, within whose depths I could see the burnished pillars gleaming. In the front there was a flight of lofty terraces, at the top of which I could see a man with his head buried forward toward a keyboard, and his body swaying from side to side amid the storm of huge arpeggioed harmonies that came crashing overhead and round. Then there was one who touched me on the shoulder and said, "Do you not see? It is Handel." But I had hardly apprehended, and was trying to scale the terraces and get near him, when I awoke, dazzled with the vividness and distinctness of the dream. A piece of wood had burned through, and the ends had fallen into the ashes with a blaze. This, I supposed, had both given me my dream and robbed me of it. I was bitterly disappointed, and sitting up on my elbow, came back to reality and my strange surroundings as best I could. I was thoroughly aroused. Moreover, I felt a foreshadowing as though my attention were arrested by something more than the dream, although no sense in particular was as yet appealed to. I held my breath and waited, and then I heard. Was it fancy? Nay. I listened again and again, and I did hear a faint and extremely distant sound of music, like that of an Aeolian harp, borne upon the wind, which was blowing fresh and chill from the opposite mountains. The roots of my hair thrilled. I listened, but the wind had died, and fancying that it must have been the wind itself, no, on a sudden I remembered the noise which Chowbok had made in the woolshed. Yes, it was that. Thank heaven, whatever it was over now. I reasoned with myself and recovered my firmness. I became convinced that I had only been dreaming more vividly than usual. Soon I began even to laugh and think what a fool I was to be frightened at nothing, reminding myself that even if I were to come to a bad end, it would be no such dreadful matter at all. I said my prayers, a duty which I had too often neglected, and in a little time fell into a really refreshing sleep, which lasted till broad daylight and restored me. I rose, and searching among the embers of my fire, I found a few live coals and soon had a blaze again. I got breakfast, and was delighted to have the company of several small birds, which hopped about me and perched on my boots and hands. I felt comparatively happy, but I can assure the reader that I had had a far worse time of it than I have told him, and I strongly recommend him to remain in Europe if he can, or at any rate in some country which has been explored and settled, rather than go into places where others have not been before him. Exploring is delightful to look forward to and back upon, but it is not comfortable at the time, unless it be of such an easy nature as not to deserve the name. End of chapter 4.